Hello. Today I want to start a series where I'm going to talk about particular hertz tunings. And today we're going to talk on the 111 hertz. Before I go a little bit further, I just want to let you know, just in case you're not aware or you just need a bit more clarity on what actually is a hertz. So hertz is usually how many cycles per second in which something is vibrating. Obviously here today we're talking about sound and music, and if you've obviously joined Robbie and I for our sound healing courses before, then you'll know that everything is made up of sound. And even if you haven't and you're well aware of that, awesome. And if you're not, well, I encourage you to look into it. So just because you can't hear the sound of everything that's in your environment does not mean that it doesn't make a sound. As we know, the human ear can only hear between a certain hertz range, and so anything usually outside that, we might not be able to hear it with our ear, but we can still feel it, or not, just depending on your receptivity, I guess I could say, with your senses. Anyway, moving on from that, so I'm going to show you a tuning fork. This is a nice little gold coloured one here, and this is a weighted tuning fork. And this one is in 111 hertz. So I'm just going to sound it out a little bit close to the microphone so that you may be able to hear it. Now obviously getting something like a tuning fork tuned to a very specific hertz is great if you're obviously wanting to produce a sound in a particular hertz. Now, yes, you can get an instrument, another instrument that would produce those kind of hertz ranges. You can also get some instruments that can be retuned to produce a particular hertz range. 111 is one that you may be able to do. And you can also get, I guess, hertz generating applications, maybe on something like your phone or maybe some very specific devices. Or you could also probably find music or sort of like a meditative potential sort of series that, you know, might go for so many minutes and it's in a sort of hertz range or it's tuned to a particular hertz. So the point of me doing these series is that I wanted to touch on some of the potential benefits to listening to each of the hertz ranges, and for 111 I'm going to go through some of those for you now. Also, I wanted to mention that you can actually make music with instruments that are not necessarily tuned to 111 hertz, and then you can also use particular technology and applications to then retune your music, especially if you're into recording music and you want to then share it with others. You can retune your music to different hertz ranges. Obviously, if you're playing a guitar at 440 hertz and then you change the tuning to 111 hertz, it's going to be very different. But some of the other tunings that might be very close to, I guess, what a lot of us are sort of used to listening in this sort of modernity music or modern music, whatever you want to call it, you know, something that's closer to that probably won't sound too different, but it may feel different. So yes, I won't go too much into that. We'll now go into the benefits, potential benefits, should I say, of 111 hertz tunings. So this may actually assist with switching off the prefrontal cortex of the brain. So that's the very front part of the brain. And when it does that, it temporarily, obviously temporary meaning while you're listening to the tuning, it can switch your, I guess, the functioning of your brain from the left side to the right side of the brain. And therefore, it can help with enhancing the intuition, the creativity, and the meditative, I guess, aspects of the brain. How you wish to use that, that's completely up to you. But if that's something that you're wanting to then get into, maybe you've got a 10-minute meditation practice or whatever it is you like to do every day that you find is really helpful, or you're experiencing, I guess, some emotional states that are not very beneficial for you, and you wish to obviously enhance the intuition, the creativity, the meditative aspects of your being, which can obviously be facilitated through the brain, then yes, 111 hertz can help with that. Next one I want to talk about is it can also help with a lot of disorders such as stress, depression, learning disabilities, learning disorders should I say as well, pain relief, and also has been shown to help with things like addiction, autism, MS, autoimmune disorders, neurodegenerative disorders as well. And some of that you can obviously see why, because a lot of them are related to the brain and how we may be thinking and how the brain may be operating. And obviously not all disorders stem from the brain, but some of those states that we can find ourselves in with those disorders can also, like I said, not necessarily originate from the brain, but can flow through the brain and interrupt a lot of the channels in the brain. Okay, I guess talking a little bit more about maybe some of the emotional things, it can also enhance your empathy abilities, as well as your cognitive behavior and emotional processing. And as you may be aware, like, emotional processing is a very big thing when it comes to any kind of disease that someone has. It could be something that's very physical or something that's more of a mental disease, body at disease, mind at disease. It all comes back to the emotion and one's ability to process emotions. As we know, if you're not able to process the emotion, it will then eventually store itself within the body. Well, and there's other bodies, depending on what science you look at, you'll find that there's an emotional body, a mental body, and on that can go. So that can be stored within there, and then that's where the disease starts to form. It's also really good at deactivating the speech center in the brain, and that will help encourage oneself to become back into a more internal focus. So again, if someone was having some issues with their speech, this may help them to actually slow down in their internal not slow down the internal process, but slow down some of the activity that's causing things like the stuttering or the inability to get words out of the mouth. Come into more of internal focus and then be able to communicate a lot clearer. You may find that they may not say as many words as what they would have, but sometimes what we're communicating doesn't necessarily actually need as many words to come out of the mouth as we sometimes think it does. Anyway, a little bit of a side note with that one. Also, it's really good with creating beta endorphin production. So it can be more often effective than morphine when it comes to pain relief, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. And it's also shown to increase endorphins, which is why it can be really beneficial to work with those that are suffering from addiction issues. Not all addictions, but a lot of addictions are related to the release of endorphins and the chasing of endorphins, the desire of the endorphins that are often released within the brain. And with something like 111 hertz, this can help produce endorphins without having to go through the addictive practice to try and get it. Doesn't necessarily stop the person from their addiction, but it can help them with their recovery. As we know, the recovery from addiction can be quite a integrated process, and the obviously modern or modernity medical sort of platform that's been around for a number of years now is quite decompartmentalized, hence why there's often a bit of a difficulty with addiction and addiction programs. but I'm kind of digressing from the point of this vlog, so I'll leave that there. Also, another great thing to mention about 111 Hertz is that you may find there are certain ancient structures and cultures which really understood the ability of sound and what that could do to the human, but obviously lots of other things, including the environment and animals and plants, although that isn't all separate, it's all integrated and connected. And you may find in your research or maybe in your travels that there are certain places that you can visit in which, if you were to sound off, maybe using your voice or particular instruments and particular hertz ranges, that the structures actually help enhance those hertz ranges and enhance the healing property, should I say potential healing properties of those tunings. I am aware that there is one in Malta which has a structure in which they have found resonates at 111 Hertz. Now, when I say the word resonate, just in case if you're not aware what the word resonate means, and I'll just try and use an example, is say I've got this tuning fork here, and I sound it off at 111 Hertz. And then I've got another tuning fork, so I don't have two at the moment within the space, and I don't sound it off, but it is in 111 Hertz too. However, I'm able to sound this one off and not sound this one off, but with the sounding off of this tuning fork that I've touched and I've hit, will then make this one over here sound off as well. So that's just a simple example of what resonation or resonating when I'm talking about sound means. So if I was to go in maybe with 111 Hertz tuning fork, maybe a really big loud one, sound it off in the chamber of this structure that I'm talking about in Malta, that would usually mean, from what the one-on-one and scientific experiences have exposed, is that the chamber actually starts resonating and sounding off at 111 Hertz. It really amplifies it. And there's potential that they were often used as, like we do today, medical centres or hospital wards, and obviously in a lot of different contexts than what we envision in our modern day hospitals, but they were able to perform some very amazing healing practices in these spaces. And so that's why I wanted to mention that as well. Just to also remind you that this information is not new wisdoms. It is very much ancient wisdoms that we are now coming back to remember. And that's what's really important to come back to with these hertz tunings. So next time I record one of these, I want to talk about the magical properties of 174 Hertz, and that relates to the 9-piece solfeggio set. So stick around to see that one, and I hope to see you in the next vlog.